In 2026, SpaceX isn't chasing one heroic launch, it's chasing something less cinematic and more decisive, a working transportation loop. Not can it fly, but can it fly often? And do the parts in between that nobody clips for social media: propellant, processing, turnaround, refueling, re-entry, repeat. Because the next era isn't about a single rocket, it's about an orbital pipeline, a system that can move mass through space like freight, not like a one-time stunt. To understand SpaceX 2026 direction, break it into a dependency ladder. First, launch and recovery of Starship and Super Heavy. Second, repeatability, ground processing, pad ops, refurbishment time, and launch cadence. Third, the keystones, orbital propellant transfer, also called on-orbit refueling. If that third step fails, the rest becomes a partial victory, a big rocket still trapped in near-Earth limits. By 2026, SpaceX's public-facing goal is not just another test, it's validating the behaviors that make a vehicle operational. Controlled re-entry with a heat shield that can survive real-world heating, landing reliability, not just dramatic saves, predictable propellant loading, and fast turnaround at Starbase, where the system is meant to iterate like hardware and not like a museum piece. But the hard truth is this: launch is not the bottleneck forever. Operations become the bottleneck, especially when you start stacking launches. And that brings us to the capability that defines 2026, refueling in orbit. Orbital propellant transfer isn't a single yes or no test. It's a chain of problems: cryogenic fluids behaving in microgravity, stable docking and connection, pressure management, propellant settling, minimizing losses like boil-off, and proving the whole sequence can work under real orbital timelines. Reuters has reported SpaceX targeting a critical in-space refueling test in 2026, tied to the lunar architecture NASA needs. That's why SpaceX keeps pointing back to refueling. It turns Starship from a huge launcher into a deep space vehicle. Now zoom out to Artemis program. NASA lists Artemis 2 in early 2026. 4 astronauts on Orion, launched by Space Launch System, circling the moon and coming home. It doesn't land, but it raises the pressure on everything that comes after. NASA also states it's working with SpaceX on Starship human landing system for Artemis surface missions. So when people ask what's SpaceX's plan for 2026, a practical answer is prove the missing links are real. Not perfect, not pretty, just real enough that the next step isn't fiction. But 2026 isn't only a moon story, it's also a scale story in Earth orbit, and that means Starlink. Starlink isn't just a satellite internet service, it's the cash flow engine that funds iteration speed. And its next phase is less about more satellites and more about new use cases, like direct-to-cell coverage that aims to connect standard phones through satellites for basic connectivity. Whether every rollout detail lands on schedule depends on the regulation, spectrum coordination, and partnerships. But the strategy is clear: make satellite connectivity feel less like a specialty product and more like a default layer of the network. So here's the real shape of SpaceX 2026 plan. Increase reliability in launch and recovery, push flight cadence and ground turnaround, demonstrate orbital propellant transfer as the gateway to deep space logistics, support Artemis infrastructure needs, and keep scaling Starlink services that monetize the system. And here's the part most people miss. Space doesn't change when rockets get bigger. Space changes when rockets get routine. If SpaceX succeeds in 2026, even partially, the headline won't be "a rocket flew." It'll be "an orbital pipeline started to work." Not a single moment, but a new normal.